There's an all new feature in Thrive Themes to talk about today, and that's the ability to add a filter into a post list element. Now, a post list has multiple uses, the first one of which is a normal standard blog post. So here's what my website looks like. I spent about maybe 5 minutes tinkering with the new filter, and here's my blog. So at the top, I just go to blog, and I've added this really neat new filter on the left-hand side where if you're coming to my website looking for tutorials, you can select the tool that you're interested in learning more about. For example, if I choose Thrive Apprentice, the page automatically, without reloading, shows only the blog posts that I have tagged for Thrive Apprentice. And I can swap this around: Thrive Architect, SureCart, there's the tutorial, Fluent CRM, ConvertBox, Circle, Cartflows, ViewAll, etc. So this is a really neat way using Ajax to kind of just reload the page and give users the ability to select the things that they want in order to filter the post list content that you have on your blog. So I want to do a couple things in this video. First, I want to show you just real quick how I built this in case you're interested in something similar. Then I want to take a look at the theme template, and then I want to take a look at how you could do this on just a normal page, adding a post list. And then I want to show you how you can use this in WooCommerce. And all I did was I went into the content wrapper, and I think this is relatively new. If you come to the content wrapper, typically anything inside the content area would just be interactive, but now you click on it to edit. And maybe this is just my site, but I don't remember this being a linked section, so maybe this is new. But if yours is like this, click on it and click edit, and now we've basically exposed the areas of our content area that we can edit. And if we click into something, you can see in the top here now, instead of like the content area being within the layout container and the layout container being within the, whatever, it seems now we're kind of like editing the content of just one section only so we don't get lost. I think my thoughts are still kind of coalescing around whether or not I love this or not, but suffice it to say that's how we currently edit the content area. So for me, I just added 2 columns. I took my normal blog post list that was on the just fully centered, taking up all this space, and I put it in the right column, and then I dropped in a content box and put it on the left. I added a little bit of styling in a background or a content box to kind of make it feel cohesive with how I've stylized I call these tiles, but they're like article designs. And then I dropped inside here the post list filter. Right now, I think this is a bug because it's kind of behaving this way everywhere I play with this. But if you hover over the post list filter, I don't know if you can see this, but it appears to like take up more space than it should, right? It's within my content box, but you can see it's stretched all the way out here, kind of to the right. It doesn't seem to affect anything, but just be aware of that as you're editing. But what I do is I click on it and then I go to post list. And here's kind of like the gist of how the new post list filter works. So 2 things. The first is you have to look at this filter option. The filter option right here, I currently have mine set to tag. Now, in order for this post list filter to work with a post list on this page, I have to click on that post list. So I've deselected my post list filter and I've clicked on my post list. Now, inside of here, we have to click on filter posts here on the left. And there's a new section here called allowed front end filters. And this is basically saying, what are we going to allow the filters to filter us by? And I added both categories and tags. I've yet to find a downside to adding all the things. So I turned on categories and tags, even though I'm only using tags. I don't see a downside there. So with that enabled, we can come back to our post list filter here and make sure that we match at least one of the things that we're allowing it to be filtered by. In our case, we want this to be a tag filter. And I've created tags for each of the tools that I create tutorials on or that I've created tutorials on so far. Now, what I really like about this is that it's not forcing me to use every tag that I have in use. Let's say that, I don't know, let's find one right here. Let's say that I didn't want to include BunnyNet. Well, I could remove BunnyNet from here, and now BunnyNet's no longer on my list. So I can curate the tags or categories or whatever I'm filtering by to create an experience unique to what I want to show on this particular page. Now, taking a quick step back as well, I misspoke a little bit here. The tag at the top right here under filter options, yeah, that needs to match too, because obviously if you're filtering by tags, it's got to match the tags. But the one that absolutely has to match, meaning this simply just won't work unless it does, is the URL query key. It needs to be tag because this is what's going to pair with this post list. So no matter what, if you're going to filter by tags, make that tag. If you're going to filter by categories, make that category. So just a heads up on that, make sure that this right here under URL query key matches your post list. And of course, obviously the one at the top needs to as well. I also like this include all option here. So if I toggle this on or off, it adds like view all, but I like that you can change the label for it. I think by default, it just said all, and I changed it to view all because to me, I just liked the way that that looked on my design. But I think it also makes sense for like guiding the user experience. And I can imagine being able to utilize that for all sorts of different purposes. Another option here that I'm so glad they included is vertical, because so many times, at least in the history of Thrive, things have been horizontal, right? Like if you think about the tab sections, like the tabbed element is horizontal. So much stuff's horizontal, but with it being vertical, I can do this like sidebar appearance, and otherwise I'd have it just going across the top and it would look terrible as a radio filter or checkbox filter. You have a couple more customizations. You can, of course, affect things like typography and whatnot. Now, getting a little bit more granular in how to make customizations, I can click on an individual element here, and I can, if you're not familiar with this, there is this like green padlock. I can make each of these individually stylized. I don't know that I would recommend doing that on this particular type of design because in doing so, you're going to make it look a little strange if they're all different, but you do have that ability for each and every one of these to unlock. And I think that that serves a better purpose. I'll show you in a second if you're using buttons. But for the radio design, if I click on a particular radio button, you'll notice that on the left-hand side, it's changed the state. It now says selected. If I click on just like the words, like for example, if I click on Big Scoots, on the left-hand side, it says state normal. But if I click on the radio button to the left of Big Scoots, where it appears to be selected, the state has changed to selected. Now, keeping Big Scoots obviously selected here, I can use this drop down and I can choose which state I want to design and change the design for on this particular radio filter option. Assuming that I want to change what it looks like when it's selected, I can now go down here and I can choose whether to inherit the page smart colors. That means the brand blue that I've chosen in Thrive Theme Builder, or I can untoggle that and obviously make any changes that I want to the color. And you can also, where it says radio style, you can click here. It's not super intuitive, but you can click here and it will give you a drop down of, honestly, a good number of different looks. I happen to like style 1. I think it looks a little bit better than default, and I don't care for too many of the others. So with style 1 selected, I think that gets the look that I personally like. And then I upped the size of my radio buttons to 20. So that's the radio. I think that let's go through a couple more of these. Under the post list, we can change it up here at the top. So in the breadcrumbs, I just went back to post list filter. And here we can change our filter type from radios to checkboxes. And I think that doesn't look so great. So what I would do then is I would click on a particular element like we just talked about, and I would change it because I don't like style 1. In this case, I would probably go with something more like style 2 or default. Default looks better in my opinion. Maybe even style 6 looks nice. If I clicked apply, and then I would up the checkbox size again closer to something like 20, so that when someone were to check it, it's very apparent that they've checked it. Back in the post list filter, we have more options. We can have, we just looked at radios and checkboxes. We can do text links, which is just like a old school WordPress look. I don't like that one. We can use a drop down, or we can use buttons or search. So let's go ahead. I'm going to give this a refresh so I don't mess anything up. All right, and now that I've got this kind of looking fresh here, let's take a look at some of those other options. So let's look at how to add this post list filter. Let's go ahead and click on our content wrapper again, or our content area. Funny how it says content wrapper, but it is the content area. We'll edit that. We'll open up our elements and let's search for filter or post list. And here's our element that we're looking for. Let's drop this onto our page, and I'm going to drop mine directly above my 2 columns. Here's just a usability tip. If you drop it here, you can see it's kind of highlighted the right column above the blog list. If you're using columns, always drop and move your mouse to where the middle of the columns would be. And you'll notice if you come back and you kind of approach it from the top, it'll drop above the column element. Just a little usability tip that I've picked up. Okay, so by default, I've dropped my post list filter, and by default, it went to the button option, which I think is pretty good. I think that's a nice option to use, particularly, we'll jump into it in a second, on individual pages. So keeping with buttons and keeping with categories, and because I've in my post list, if I show you this again, let's click on my post list, go to filter posts, and I've allowed category to be the query key. Close that out. I'll come back into my post list with my buttons. Category sounds good to me. Let's go ahead and click into this search button because I have more than just 3 categories. Let's click to add the rest of my categories. So now I've got these buttons going along the top for my different categories. And let's go down here and look to make sure our URL query key matches categories, and by default it does. And remember, I can change this to something like tag or category. I'm going to put it back to category. And here's an option that I think is pretty interesting. There's the ability to allow multiple selections. If this is toggled on, people can select multiple buttons. But interesting fact here is that if it were toggled on, and let's assume that these were tags, right? Let's assume we weren't using categories, but we were using tags. Maybe a better comparison would be to say, let's assume that this radio filter post here that we looked at earlier was a checkbox filter, and people could check multiple things at once. Well, I always mix this up, but the way I like to think about it is that it's inclusive, not exclusive, meaning if maybe I've got that backwards, let me know. But if I selected, for example, Fluent CRM and Thrive Apprentice, it's going to show me posts that are both in Fluent CRM and Thrive Automator. And let me clarify, I'm not saying it's going to show me posts tagged Fluent CRM and tagged Thrive Automator. I mean, it's going to show me all of the Fluent CRM posts and all of the Thrive Automator posts. It's not going to filter the two and say I only want posts that are in Fluent CRM and Thrive Automator or Thrive Apprentice, whichever one I said. Basically, I hope you get what I'm saying, right? It's not that they what they have in common, it's just adding to them. It's additive. I think perhaps the best way to show you this would actually be to look at it in real time here. So let's look at my list and let's select e-commerce and Thrive Suite. So now what it's doing is it's showing all posts that are categorized e-commerce and all posts that are categorized Thrive Suite. It's not subtracting and only showing the posts that share these categories because they don't exist, right? Nothing would be showing. Now on the left, I have the ability to filter by tag as well because I have a second filter. Let's say I only wanted to see the posts that were tagged SureCart. So I'll select that, and would you look at that? There's my SureCart post because my SureCart post is categorized as e-commerce. Let's change this. Let's select Fluent CRM. Interestingly, there's a post here because this post with my tech stack is probably tagged both of these. Let's find another option, something like ThriveCart. ThriveCart's tagged e-commerce, but look what happens when I uncheck e-commerce. Now it's only showing the posts that are tagged ThriveCart, but also categorized as Thrive Suite. So if you want to have layers of basically categories and tags, you absolutely can. Just realize that you're going to need to add 2 separate filters and then understand how that filtering is taking place. This is just one of those things that you're going to have to kind of figure out as you use. And my only feedback to Thrive would be, I would love the ability for, if I'm going to select multiple things, like for example, if I were to select multiple tags, I would like the option to be able to set it so that the posts showing are only the posts that are tagged both of these options, rather than showing all the posts in one as well as all of the posts in the other. I hope that makes sense. Okay, moving on, let's jump into just a normal page on my website, just a very standard page. And let's say that I were making like a silo and I made this post all about, I don't know, e-commerce. And let's say I had a really great section all about e-commerce and I linked off to certain things and tools, and I had a section for recommendations, and I wanted to add in a section for my articles, right? Very typical silo page stuff. Using Thrive, I can open up the element tray over here, and I'm going to add a post list. So I'll just drop that onto my page, and I'm not going to do a lot of styling. I don't want to waste too much time here, but let's just choose this one. Great, we've got our post list on the page. It's not styled, and it's basically pulling only my top 6 most recent posts. But let's add a post filter now. Or I think we just call it filter, post list filter, and let's just drop it above it. And let's change this to, I think categories good, but we'll switch it to tags, and we'll leave it on buttons. And we'll go into our post list and click filter posts, and we will say allowed front end filters. I guess by default it added all of them. Like I said, I don't see there being a downside to that. So just going to make sure that's there. Click save and close. But I do want to go back to my post list filter and change, well, it already did it for me. It's got the URL query key set to tag. That's interesting. Let's go to category. Oh yeah, cool. It changes. Awesome. So kind of like what I talked about earlier, these two, it only ever makes sense that they do match. So just don't mess with this and you should be totally fine. Now, going back to talking about a silo page here, imagine if this was a section, like I said, the page is about e-commerce. Well, maybe on this section, I want to talk all about selling courses. So for that, I would want to go into my posts and make sure that I filter my posts here to only show, and I'm still going to use this section here, right? I think filtering is important because I don't want all my posts to appear until filtered. I only want those that are tagged with the following tags. For us, we're going to use maybe SureCart because you can sell courses with SureCart, and we're going to use ThriveCart because you can sell courses with ThriveCart. And I only want to also show posts that belong to Thrive Apprentice. I think that makes sense. So I'll go ahead and click Save. Now my list has filtered. It's showing posts that are in those. But let's go back to our post list filter and let's change this. So I don't want Big Scoots or BunnyNet or Cart Flows, although I could have left Cart Flows because you can sell courses with WooCommerce. But maybe this section is all about non-WordPress tools or something like that. So the tags I would want to include here are let's start with SureCart. Maybe that'll be my default, and then I'll choose ThriveCart. Let's find ThriveCart, and let's leave it like that. Notice I did not add the Thrive Apprentice tag because I don't want to filter by Thrive Apprentice. I only want to filter by the tools that I'm using to sell my courses. Adding Thrive Apprentice as a filter on the post list was done so that it would just show posts related to courses. All right, now I need to do some more things here. I need to remove the all option because in doing so, I'm making it so that only posts are going to show that match one of my tags here. So inside of my post list filter, I want to change the default value here to SureCart and click out of it here. And then I'm going to save this because I'm interested now in what this looks like on the front end. Okay, so good. It did exactly what I thought it would do. So remember, this post list is filtered on the back end to only be SureCart, ThriveCart, and Thrive Apprentice tags. With SureCart enabled here, it's only going to show posts that have SureCart. If I unselect that, it'll show all of them, and if I select ThriveCart, it'll show just the ThriveCart ones. Oh, you can see there I've already got a problem. I'm capable of selecting both of them. That's not what I want. So let's go back into my post list, click on my filter, or rather, here's my filter, and I want to uncheck the option, here it is, allow multiple selections. Perfect. Let's save that, come back to our page and do a refresh. Terrific. So now we have SureCart, and this would look better if I had more posts. We have SureCart, and then I can bounce back and forth between my SureCart and my ThriveCart posts. Now what I would want to do is I would want to come back to this page and I would want to add stuff like, tools to sell courses, and I'd want to make that like an H2, and I'd want to put some text below it and kind of talk about what it is people are filtering and maybe give some contextual ways for people to know they're going to click these buttons. In fact, one of them, let's do this right now. One of them would be the padlock right here. I'm going to make the SureCart button look different from the ThriveCart button. Maybe I want SureCart to have the SureCart green. So I'll go to the color here, and I've unlocked it. Let's just go ahead and add the SureCart green. I think that's their brand green. And ThriveCart, maybe let's have that have the ThriveCart color. So I'll select ThriveCart, select colors, and maybe put in a color. Okay, I'm not done yet. Let's go back to the SureCart button, and I want to add an icon. And I think an icon on the left looks good. Cool. SureCart will leave as a credit card, and I'll click onto ThriveCart, unlock that one, add an icon. And then for this one, maybe we'll change our icon to be a cart. Terrific, that looks good enough, and select it. Cool, now I've got two buttons that look like buttons that can be interacted with to change my filter. So that's one way that you can create a filter to work on a silo page. All right, we're not done just yet. Now we are on my wife's website. She sells sheet music and things that she arranges and composes. And she has this really cool Halloween page. I actually have a video here on the channel where I walk through how to build this using post lists and WooCommerce. And on this page, she kind of breaks out the different categories like the top Halloween picks and the spooky fun Halloween music. Well, now let's take a look at this post list. This post list, if I go to filter posts, has some pretty complex filtering, right? It's only displaying Halloween sheet music, and it's excluding different types of tags like popular arrangements and music theory resources, and it's excluding particular posts as well because she really wants to curate that experience. So she's done a great job by filtering her product, or rather her post list that's become a product list, because here at the top, the content she's displaying are WooCommerce products rather than posts. So cool tip there if you didn't know about it. But we can take this one step further. We can actually come in and add our filter. So I'll do a search for filter and drop that above. And now we can come into here and say, well, we don't want them to be categories. We want them to be up here at the top. Look what happens. If I go to the filter options now and I drop down, because her website has WooCommerce installed, it actually will add product categories, product tags, product genre, these are product attributes that she has on her site. So if I were to add product key and I clicked into here, you can see there's all these, this is like way beyond my knowledge. I mean, look at this, this is ridiculous. But there's all these different like music keys, and let's just leave it at that before I embarrass myself. But basically, if I were to, and again, if I were to save this, I have no idea if any of her music falls within these particular keys for these songs, but users would be able to come in here, search for spooky, fun Halloween piano music, and say, oh, Banshee Boogie, maybe that's in the C major scale. Or, you know, they could click on the scale, like if they had a student who was learning F sharp minor, they could click on that, and it would show all of the posts, or in this case, products from WooCommerce that she has filtered for spooky and fun. And the user would then be able to take that one step further and say, well, of those spooky and fun piano sheet music that you're showing, I only want the ones in F sharp minor. How ridiculously cool is that you can now get that granular with your filtering? All right, I hope this video was helpful showing you this brand new post list filter element. I know this was a pretty long video, but we took a deep dive into this, and I wanted to make sure I covered all of the different angles and showed you some of the ways in which you can use this across the spectrum on different types of websites with multiple use cases, as well as some of the nuances that I think will probably even be changed over time. There will be plenty more to come on the post list filter element as I implement it and play around with it, but that'll do it for this video. I'm Doug from Convology, and I'll see you in the next one.